back, everybody. We are starting to talk once again about politics, but maybe on a bigger scale than just Lloydminster here. We'll go to Alberta, actually, and a huge sweeping changes all around. As you see, NDPs actually took over, and it was an orange crush.
From a fourth-place party to a majority government, it was a summer of change in Alberta as the NDPs completed their orange crush and won 54 seats. Supporters credit Rachel Notley and her solid campaign. Others say it was Albertans tired of the Jim Prentice-led Conservatives. But whatever the answer, the Tories' 43-year reign is over.
So as you heard just right there, 43 years of Tory rule gone in just that instant. Now, Jeremy, what's the bigger story here? The NDP win or the Conservative loss?
You know what? It has to be a little bit of both. I think that the NDP campaigned on, positive politics. Here's what we can do. Here's what we can change. And that was kind of emphasized more because of what we had recently experienced, what Albertans had recently experienced with the last couple of years with the PC government, whether it was Redford or Prentice. There just was a little bit of unsavoriness, I'll say it. People seem to be kind of fed up with, I guess, just with the Conservatives, and you saw that with the results of the election. Wildrose staying official opposition, and the PCs I think they're down to just a few seats under 10.
And I'm sure the tough economic times probably must have helped kind of speed that process up. I'm sure if the times are good, there wouldn't be too much of a need. I mean, maybe you might not like Jim Prentice, but why leave a winning horse? But again, this is a huge change.
And it has resulted in a huge change because just last week we saw the speech by Brian Jean extending a hand to the Progressive Conservatives. Now, admittedly, not the same thing as the floor crossing, which definitely did not work out for anyone involved, but still just asking, it's kind of extending a hand to the membership, being like, hey, think about this. Now, in Vermilion Lloydminster, I don't think that's exactly, it's going to work out, at least from what I know so far, because I was talking to the candidates this last week. But it's been interesting to see how that's worked out too, because we have a federal example and now we might have a provincial example in the future.
Absolutely, and we'll move on to the federal one a little bit later here, but the NDPs aren't coming in on the best of times either. Tough economic times, and they're taking some people off, especially with things like especially oil and gas royalty review right now.
They're just doing so much stuff that's not helping their own cause, and you got to wonder in 4 years if they're going to be sticking around. At least if you talk to people in Lloydminster, they obviously want them gone. Everybody wants them gone.
The vast majority.
The vast majority of and that's obviously because we're a conservative constituency. But for the whole province, you wonder if some of this stuff is actually going to make a lasting change. And there's going to be there has been bumps along the road, and we've seen that. But they have 4 years to kind of smooth things out, and that's the greater thing, that you're going to give these guys 4 years with a majority government to figure everything out. That's a long time to make people forget about what's happened before.
And that was the idea behind, it was 43 years of Conservatives. Throw them in there, even if it's just for 4 years, just to kind of change things up and see if, we might get another Conservative government in 4 years. And it would be different because there has been this change.
Absolutely, and I think it probably helps a bit. It is a majority government. The fact if they did come in as a minority, all the problems they're having now would just be tenfold trying to go up against Conservatives in the Wildrose. And now it's not just oil and gas royalty that they were under a backlash under. It's also a bit about Bill 6, as we had some local producers kind of actually angry at this as well.
I'm hurt in my heart. I'm ashamed of my government. Basically, they spit on us farmers.
Some choice words by local producers, but it's a sentiment shared by many after the Alberta NDPs began to push through Bill 6, a controversial law that, among other things, aims to protect farm and ranch workers, as they would no longer be excluded from occupational health and safety protection. The NDP argue that it would help protect those that make their living in the ag industry, especially in the wake of 4 children being killed on Alberta farms this year. Those that oppose the first part of the bill say they are worried that it will hurt them in the end.
Some of those visuals you just saw, actually, that came from Town Hall meeting in Vermilion. So some local farmers definitely a little bit angry about this, is really how it's been pushed out. Let me first preface this. None of us at this table here grew up in a farming background, have a farm, or have had a farming family or whatnot. Personally, though, as growing up as living in a city and not actually having that experience, it's been an interesting topic listening to all these, what people are saying. What are producers telling you guys?
Well, I'll take the lead on this one then. Yeah, I just do want a disclaimer. I do have some cousins, and my grandparents were.
So a little bit of farming.
I've worked. Yeah, I've done some chores. I've carried some grain before. Definitely, we've heard from producers that they are unhappy with the execution. I recently spoke with Dr. Richard Starkey about this whole thing, and he seems to be hearing from people that everyone agrees safety on farms is paramount, and anything that we can do to increase that is universally agreed upon. The issue area producers are having with Bill 6 is the execution and the just unclarity, I guess. They're not really
communication issues.
Communication issues, yeah, like I kind of just had there. Yeah, they're concerned every time they ask for answers from the government. They don't seem to be getting a clear one as to who it actually affects, how it actually is going to affect them moving forward, because it comes into effect just on January 1st.
Absolutely, and for sure, safety is always important on farms. But at the end of the day, all these producers, they are worried about this because this is their bread and butter. Any more fees they have to pay, any more taxes and such as that, there's always going to be questions raised about this. So they almost have a point. Would you guys not say?
Well, yeah, it makes sense to be concerned about your livelihood, and it makes sense that when there's gaps in information coming from the government that you are concerned about, you are going to fill that gap with anger or fear or anything like that. And like you said, the execution and the communication from the NDP on this particular topic was not the best, and thus they have a lot of anger to deal with.
But when are you upset about your bottom line? What about people's livelihoods themselves and being able to do that, about safety and about training on the farm? Were you trained properly?
Absolutely.
Full disclosure.
I was also not a paid employee, though.
And so that to me is more important. That we're getting, this is 2015, we got to start worrying about people and bottom line, and we all know that's a struggle. You still got to worry about just basic human rights that everybody gets, and hopefully farmhands are getting the same thing.
Absolutely, and this issue is going to go on for a while. I know the first part of the bill has been going through a process right now, and we may see the full bill come into effect by the end of next year, but that still might be a little farther away. Well, speaking a little farther away, we're going to go to Ottawa actually right now, where there is another big sweeping change as Justin Trudeau and the Liberals took office.
It's not only Alberta that has a new leader today. This as Justin Trudeau transformed his Liberals from third-place contenders to the majority party in Canada. A major feat, but in this tough economic climate and some major promises being made, the real work has already begun. On the other side of the floor, the Conservatives are rebuilding, starting with a search for a new leader.
So Justin Trudeau and his nice hair did eventually take his office there, which brings me to my point. Trudeau win or Harper loss?
Trudeau win, for sure. Yeah. I think Harper lost it for himself by calling elections so early and allowing so much time, but there was a movement for wanting change in this country, and Justin Trudeau was that change that we actually wanted, or I'm going to say that as a Ontario voting Liberal, more than likely, but then it's what it is. And they look at everything that happened and all the scandals and stuff. It was more of what Harper did previously and all the scandals that got him caught, and then calling election and having a long time for people to have that sink in multiple times. And then it wasn't sensitive easily for Trudeau.
There was a point, though, because the reason that I was too young to really understand what happened when Stephen Harper first came to power as Prime Minister. Right? I wasn't really engaged in politics at the time, but looking back at it, the Liberals also had scandals when they were in power before Harper. So it's not. So Harper was kind of an answer to that, and then now that Trudeau's been elected, he's kind of like the new face of it. They want to avoid all that scandal taking to past. Now they have some ministers who are still from that past now ministers once again, but it is interesting to see the change.
So it's definitely some big promises ahead for the Liberals there. We'll see kind of how that turns out in 2016. Well, after the break, we'll come back with a bit of a touching tribute to a local firefighter. Stay tuned.